Genesis 21. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said. By the way, the Lord always does what he's going to do. Always. He had told Abram and Sarah, you're going to have a child. But he had to wait until it was impossible physically for that to happen. Now God says, watch, this way God gets the glory, not you. And the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. And Sarah conceived and bare Abram a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. So Abraham's nearly 100, and Sarah's about to turn 90. And she says, guess what, honey? We are going to have a baby. Imagine going to a nursing home and having somebody say that. Okay. You'll let me know, Lady Di. Okay. And Abram called the name of that son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. Now, Isaac, I understand in the Hebrew language, means laughter. There's a kid named Laughter. And Abram circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old. Remember, on the 8th day, your body maxes out on vitamin K. The ideal time to circumcise is the 8th day. There is no possible way they could have known that scientifically back 2000 BC. This had to be told. God just said, just do it on the 8th day. Okay, God. You know, sometimes we don't even understand why God tells us to do things. Just do it. I've been a Christian almost 49 years. I have never understood why God wants us to pray. He already knows. Why are we supposed to pray at all? Why ask him for anything? He already knows. Maybe that doesn't bother anybody else, but Lord, why am I doing this? You already know. Well, son, you need to practice, and it keeps you out of trouble for 10 minutes. So just do it, okay? Sometimes the Jews had quite a few strange customs that we would consider oddball stuff. Like, why do you do that? I don't know. Doesn't matter. God said do it, so you do it. See, God said circumcise on the 8th day, and so they circumcised on the 8th day. Okay, and now we know why. Because vitamin K production is the highest on the 8th day of any other day in their life. That's the highest. Okay. And Abram was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh. And so they named him Isaac, which means laughter. So that all that hear me will laugh with me. Sarah's thinking, boy, wait till my neighbors hear about this. This is going to be good. She said, who would have said unto Abram that Sarah should have given children suck? Now, there's one advantage to this. She could lay the kid on the floor and nurse it while she's doing the dishes standing at the sink. Right? Lady died. Never mind. For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abram made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. You're going to want to edit all that out. Never mind. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abram, mocking. So now he's got a 13-year-old older half-brother, the son of Hagar the Egyptian. And the kid is mocking. So the 13-year-old is mocking either the Sarah or the baby. The 13-year-old or 14-year-old is making fun of this. Wherefore she said unto Abram, cast out this bondwoman and her son. So Sarah saw the 13-year-old kid mocking, and she said to her husband, Abram, get rid of both of them, kick them out of here. How many of you, when you were 13 or 14, did something stupid that made your parents want to kick you out of the house? Okay. The brain doesn't even start to grow till kids are 20, and even later in some cases. But the kid mocking the new baby or the mother, Sarah said, get him out of here. For the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. Now hold on, Sarah. Wasn't it you that suggested we do this 13 years ago and get this kid? Remember, Sarah's the one who said, hey, marry my handmaid. Had Abram not gone down to Egypt, he never would have picked up that girl anyway. They went down to, God said, go to the promised land and stay there. Well, they didn't. He went down to Egypt, picked up a servant girl. Hey, honey, you need a maid around the house. Okay, I'm rich. I'll get you a full-time maid. And so after some amount of time, she said, honey, marry my maid and have a child by her, which was their custom. But had Abraham not gone to Egypt, this may not have happened. Had he just trusted God and waited, this might not have happened. Oftentimes, we just get over anxious and do things that just cost us a lot, or cost the whole world a lot, like this one is still costing us. Go get some gas and you'll see what it's costing, okay, because of the Middle East conflict. This kid's not going to be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abram's sight because of his son. Of course, Abram loves his 13-year-old boy Ishmael too, or 14-year-old. And God said to Abram, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of the bondwoman. In all that Sarah said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. So God says, Abram, go ahead and kick this woman and her son out. That's what he's telling him. For in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. God says, Abram, I'm going to do something great with Ishmael because he's your child. Sometimes we reap the benefits of godly parents. We don't deserve it. It's because parents deserved it. And God says, okay, I'm going to take care of you because of your dad, because of your mom. Parents, you can leave a godly heritage for your kids. Because he's thy seed, I'm going to take care of the son of this bondwoman. And we see this with David in Solomon in 2 Samuel 12. And David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and went in unto her and lay with her, and she bare a son and called his name Solomon, and the Lord loved him. Now hold on a minute. David just murdered this lady's husband. And he committed adultery with Bathsheba right there. Had her husband murdered when they found out she's pregnant, Uriah. I mean, and yet God said, I'm going to bless Solomon. That's the second son. The first baby died. He married Bathsheba. Okay, she's wife number 85 or whatever she was, I don't know. And they have another son. And listen, it doesn't matter what your parents have done. You can serve God. You might be an illegitimate child. Okay, say, God, I probably shouldn't be here. Yep, that's probably right. But I'm going to shut my ringer off here. I forgot. No. But I'll use you anyway. God used Solomon he wrote 3 books in our Bible. You know, Song of Solomon, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. This kid never should have been born. But God used him anyway. We see that with Timothy in Acts 16. He came to Derbe and Lystra, and a certain disciple named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, and believed, but his father was a Greek. Well, the Jews weren't supposed to marry anybody but Jews. Mama disobeyed, married a Greek. Timothy's the result, and God used Timothy to write 2 books in the Bible. So we got a whole Bible with all kinds of stuff going on in there. Well, people probably really shouldn't have been born. But don't use that as an excuse to not serve God. Just say, okay, God, would you take me just as I am? Sure, just as you are. Come on, let's go. Let's do something. And Abram rose early in the morning and took the bread and the bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. Now, one of the first debates I did was with a professor at University of West Florida. And he said there are contradictions in the Bible. I said, well, like, name one. He said, how is she going to put this child on her shoulder? The kid's 14 years old. I said, you got to be kidding. Does it say he put the child on her shoulder? Does it say? No. Look at it carefully. She took the bread and a bottle of water, Abraham did, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder. What did he put on her shoulder? The bread and the bottle of water. And the child, and sent her away. It doesn't say he put the child on her shoulder. But if somebody's looking for a contradiction in the Bible, they'll find one or make one. Because they don't want to believe what it says. That's the problem. Anyway, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Now, Beersheba is an interesting place. We'll talk about that in a minute. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew Samuel was established to be a prophet. All through the Bible, there's probably a dozen references where it refers to Israel as being from Dan to Beersheba. In 2 Samuel, you're going to set the kingdom up from the house of Saul over the throne set up the throne of David from Dan to Beersheba. Here it is again. Well, Dan is the city way up here in the northern part of Israel, way above the Sea of Galilee. Beersheba is way down here. So when they say from Dan to Beersheba, that's like us saying from shore to shore, or from New York to California, or from, something like that. Florida to Washington. It's the 2 extremities of the country. I'm thinking about 120 miles apart, if I recall. Now, if you go to Palestine Gardens, do they have Beersheba?
They have Mount Hebron or something.
Well, up at the top, Don made a model, nothing, it's 120 yards long, representing 120 miles.
Mount Hermon, is it?
Mount Hermon, yeah. But it's a miniature version. You can walk through Israel. And all the cities are laid out to scale. Or the cities, in right position to scale. And then they're made out of cement blocks. And it's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
You were there for a couple of days? Yeah. So if you're going through Loosedale, Mississippi, Good luck finding that place. You got to go down 6 country roads and turn where the crow sits on the fence, and you'll finally find it. But it's worth going to see. Okay, but a miniature version of from Israel, you can see from Dan to Beersheba. So 120 miles, a little more than here to Montgomery. That's the whole nation of Israel. That's it. Okay, and the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. So they ran out of water. They're walking in the desert, and Beersheba is in the desert. And she went and sat down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. How far can you shoot an arrow? And she said, let me not see the death of the child, because they're out of water. They're in a desert and no water. This is not a good position to be in. And she sat over against him, lifted up her voice, and wept. Sometimes there's nothing else you can do except just cry. Lord, I'm in a hopeless situation here. This is hopeless. God, would you fix it? I don't know. Well, I've been there many times. Many times. Lord, this is hopeless. So she just sat over there and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called unto Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not. It's interesting, whenever God or his angels appear, it's almost always with these two words starting off the conversation. Fear not. There's a bunch of them in the Bible. I didn't add them up. You can do that if you'd like. But when Muhammad says when the angel appeared to him, he choked him and strangled him and tried to kill him. Their whole religion and nationality, their whole philosophy, theology, is based on fear. That's why they call them terrorists. Let's use terror as a weapon. Whereas with Christianity, it's exactly the opposite. Love thy neighbor, love thine enemy. Give him, if an enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water. The complete opposite in their theology and thinking, from especially the Nation of Islam. What aileth thee? Fear not. God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. I wouldn't want to be involved in a religion that's based on fear, where you're afraid to say anything against what you people are telling you have to believe. Come on, grow up, get a brain. Think for yourself. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. It's interesting. Sometimes the answer to our prayer is just right there, but we can't see it. Usually God answers it before we even pray. He already knows. Fear not. It's going to be fine. And she's been sitting there, dying of thirst, and her boy's dying of thirst, 14 years old. And whoa, there's a well. Duh. There's the answer to my prayer right there. And she filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. So they're living out there in the desert, and he's becoming a Daniel Boone kind of guy. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Remember, she's Egyptian. He's half Egyptian. So now his kids are going to be 3/4 Egyptian. And they'll probably preach for hours on that one. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, the general of his army, spake to Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Even the people he's living with could tell, God is blessing this man. People that see you ought to be able to say, what is with you? How come God blesses you so much? Now, we assume this Abimelech guy doesn't know the Lord. Abram's living near them with all of his sheep, and he says, hey, Abram, God is with you, isn't he? Yeah, he really, I can't explain it, but he really is, He really is. Now, therefore, swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me. He says, look, I know God's blessing you, so we better make an agreement here. We're going to make a contract, a covenant, a treaty. I won't hurt you, you don't hurt me. Don't deal falsely with me, my son's son, that according to the kindness that I have done to thee. He said, look, man, I let you live on my land. We didn't bother you. We need a treaty that goes for 3 generations. Okay, fair enough. Thou shalt do unto me and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abram said, I will swear. So Abram made a treaty with this guy down here in this land. And Abram reproved Abimelech because of the well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. Abram's guys drilled a well. Now, we don't think that's such a big deal, but imagine digging a hand-dug well with a shovel in the desert. I had a hand-dug well on my property in Groveland, Illinois. The house I built there had an old well on the property, and it was all brick, loose stacked brick. They weren't cemented together. So it was only 35 feet deep. We went down, scrubbed it all out, cleaned it out, and let the water come in. Still, we couldn't get enough water, so we had to drill a well anyway. But we thought we might try to use it. It was an old homestead. So I got asking the old timers, how do you do these wells? How do they build these things? He said, well, we build a form on top of the ground, a round form to hold the bricks. You climb inside, and just right on top of the ground, you put a row of bricks around. You pack them in real tight so they're all corner to corner. The form holds them in, and there's no cement, no nothing. You keep stacking up until your form is full to the top, 4 feet tall. So you're inside of this column of bricks. Then you get down and start digging out under it. And when you dig under the bricks slide down. Then somebody on top keeps adding a row of bricks. So the guy on top, they keep adding bricks while you're down there digging the dirt out. After he said, when you get down about 50 or 60 feet in some of this soil, you don't really need to dig under the bricks because the weight of the bricks is just pushing it down and it's pushing the dirt to the middle, and you just keep shoveling it out. They're hauling it up in buckets. He said the scariest thing is when you're down there about 100 feet and that whole column of bricks above you slides. He said it makes a noise that'll just scare you to death, you know. You think, what if this collapses? Oh, we'll put a nice cross on top of it for you. I mean, but the hand-dug wells are a challenge. So these guys spent all this time digging a well, and Abimelech's army, which of course he's got an army. Abram's got just his family and his workers there, maybe a couple hundred guys. They couldn't fight him. And sometimes you got enemies that are way too big to fight. So you got to just say, okay, Lord, you take care of this one. So Abram reproved Abimelech. He said, hey, we're neighbors, we're buddies, but look, your servants took away my well that my servants drilled. And a well in a desert is a real valuable chunk of real estate. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this. Neither didst thou tell me. Neither heard I of it yet today. I didn't know about this till right now, but he took care of it. He said, servants, come here. That's Abram's well. Move off. They fixed the deal. And Abram took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abram set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. A ewe lamb is a female lamb. And Abimelech said unto Abram, what mean these 7 ewe lambs, which you set by yourself? Why are you doing this? Why you got these 7 over here? I guess that's farmer talk. They notice things like I wouldn't notice. But they notice, I got those 7 lambs by themselves. And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand. He said, I got these set over here because I'm going to give them to you, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. This is kind of the way they did their, notary public, so whatever. This is proof that I dug the well. You're going to take these lambs, and that's proof that this is my well. That's how they did it. I'm sorry, okay. Wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear, both of them. Now here's what Beersheba looks like today. It is a ruins. They've excavated it, and part of the walls are still standing. It was a decent-sized city in the middle of the desert. Now the Jews have done incredible work down all over Israel, and it is green. They are growing stuff in the desert like you would not believe. I've only been over there once. Have you been over there, Anna? Yeah. It's phenomenal. They have turned that desert into a garden. Just Google Earth, zoom in on Israel. All around that area, it's all brown. Because all their neighbors, they don't take time to plant their yard, plant grass, do something. The Jews really work at it. They've developed a drip irrigation system that's phenomenal. When I was over there, they're telling me how much water they use to get a bushel of apples or something compared to what Americans use. We waste it like you wouldn't believe. Spray it all over during the daytime when 90% evaporates. No, they use drip irrigation at night because water's really expensive over there, and they've learned to get by with near nothing. Just study what they're doing with their irrigation system. But that's Beersheba today. Here it is. Many people think this is the well that they dug. I don't know. Could be. How would you know 4,000 years later? Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up and Phicol, the chief of the captain, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. So Abimelech left these guys alone at Beersheba, moved over to the land of the Philistines, 15 miles away. So here you got Beersheba. This land along this coast right here is the land of the Philistines. Let's see. Who came from that? Who came from Philistine that you might think of? Goliath. Yeah. Now, God had told Joshua when they went into this land later to conquer the whole thing. They didn't do it. Didn't quite conquer that part. Now, if you're a Christian, God has probably given you a list of things He'd like to change in your life. Hey, son, daughter, stop doing this, and start doing this. He's probably given you a list. I know He's given me a list, okay, and I'm still struggling with a couple of them, but He's given you a list too, I'm sure. God said, you conquer this land. Well, they didn't quite do it. They didn't conquer that little strip of land along the Mediterranean Sea. Does anybody know who lives there today? That little same strip of land is where the Palestinians are. This is called the Gaza Strip. They're having trouble tonight, 2017, because of a problem that started 4,000 years ago. Didn't quite conquer that sin. Some people, God tells them, look, you're my child now, quit drinking alcohol. And they don't quite conquer that one. And years later, they're dying of cirrhosis in the hospital. And God's looking at them saying, you really should have conquered this one 30 years ago, you know. I told you, you should have listened. Because they didn't fix the Philistine problem. It now is a Palestinian problem. Here's the Palestinian problem. He says, hey, to Israel, you're in my chair. Got all this over here, you know, but no, you're in my chair. They want that little chunk of property so bad. Now, they already own, 10 million times as much property as the Jews do, but no, they got to have their land too. I was over there just for 7 days, and I was just stunned. When I was in Jerusalem, it's divided up into 4 quarters. They've got the French quarter and the British quarter and the Muslim quarter, or whatever they call it, and the Jewish quarter. When you walk through this archway from the Jewish quarter, just through a wall this thick into the Palestinian quarter, it's like you went back 4 centuries. You feel like all of a sudden I'm unsafe. What? It's an oppressive feeling. The shopkeepers come out of their shop and turn around, take a leak on the wall in front of their shop. They don't have bathrooms in there. You don't need one. I mean, it's 7th century stuff a lot of times. Like what? Wake up. If you ever get a chance to go over there, see if you feel the same thing. Everybody that I've talked to that's been over there talks about this. It's oppressive. They're still fighting over that little chunk of land. Now, God has promised them a whole bunch more property than that. We talked about that before. So, Abram planted a grove in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord. And to this day, Beersheba is part of Israeli property.